Every time you think Brian Hartline can't go find another wide receiver to add to an Ohio State recruiting class, he does just that. Brian Hartline adds another wide receiver to Ohio State's recruiting classes. It's every single year. He's finally outdone himself. He's done 4 plenty of times. He's done 3, but he's never done 5 until now. Jerquaden Guilford, the number 439 player, number 68 wide receiver out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. Marlon Graham's from Fort Wayne, isn't he? Fort Wayne's done good for Ohio State. He camped this summer, earned an Ohio State offer. He's also taken official visits to Indiana and Michigan this spring in June. And Brian Hartline wins out because, once again, Andrew, Brian Hartline gets what he wants.
I mean, I guarantee you, if you had listened to, podcasts from us in last couple of weeks, we would have been like, and I would have been like, yeah, they're done. They're good at 4. They have.
Yeah, they should be done.
It's 4 receivers. You think to yourself, oh, we're fine. It's the little, if you listen to the podcast, and we hope you all do, find that wherever you get your podcast. One of the things that we have talked about is the offensive line, and going, hey, when you lose your left tackle and then you lose your second string left tackle, things are not supposed to go smoothly. But guess what? They do. Well, guess what? When you have a 4th wide receiver committed in Ohio State's recruiting class, things are supposed to be done. Well, guess what? They're not. Jerquaden Guilford, you mentioned it. He's a borderline 3-4-star player, number 439 overall in the class, number 68 wide receiver, like you said, 6'2", 190. I thought he looked pretty good at the one-day camps. He was back in mid-June. He was back at Ohio State, kind of working out with some of the other receivers. Now, I think he was – I'm not going to say he was necessarily the MVP of the day. There were a few 5-stars in the 2028 and 2027 class. There were around Jameer Brown was here. Quentin Burrell, I believe, was here.
Pretty loaded there.
Yeah, those days were not, I'm not going to say that he was in that group, but I thought he looked really good. And I remember in the back of my head, I just kept thinking, are they going to take 4? Are they going to take 5? Because if they take 5, I could see why you would take Guilford. And I like Guilford's game. I thought, he's a good route runner. I thought he moved well, especially for 6'2", 190. This, to me, and there's a bigger conversation here, which we'll get to after we're done talking about Jerquaden as an individual. Jerquaden adds, I think, something to this room to where you feel like you have a player on the rise. I said borderline 3-4-star player. If I had to guess, I don't think he's going to end as a 3-star player. If I had to put money on it, I don't think he's going to conclude his recruitment as a 4-star recruit. So you add Guilford as one of the better players in the country, or better receivers in the country, I should say. And now, I mean, you have a wide receiver room, which there's, like I said, there's the bigger picture conversation, which is going to be adding a whole heck of a lot of talent and a whole heck of a lot of bodies into that room. And there are some considerations that we've talked about on and offline, Stephen, about, the 105 scholarships and Ohio State development and things like that. And I think that's why this makes sense. So if Guilford was in for it and Ohio State was in for it, and Guilford, I think, obviously has the talent to play at Ohio State, really, really good football player, it made sense. And it made sense for both parties, I think, to just say, I'm going to go here. Jerquaden Guilford could have gone to Indiana. I know Indiana was really pushing for him, and he probably would have been maybe their best receiver in the class. I don't know the ins and outs of the Hoosiers recruiting.
He would have been the best receiver in their class.
He would have been, I think, somebody that, I know Michigan was involved and had an OV for him too. If he commits to Michigan, I think he is one of those guys where maybe not year 1, but in year 2, you're thinking, oh, he might be a guy. With Ohio State, it's a whole different ball game, just with the receivers that they have. So if Ohio State can add a player of that quality as their 5th wide receiver in a class, I think most people are going to be okay with that. And obviously Jerquaden was, and obviously Brian Hartline and Ohio State were too.
So now you've got Chris Henry, 5-star recruit, number 15 player, number 3 wide receiver in the country. Caden Dixon-Wyatt, number 108 player, number 13 wide receiver in the country. I think those are 2 guys where, just based on their recruiting pedigree, you're maybe expecting, regardless of what they do in 2026 and 2027, they should be fighting to win starting jobs. I think that's a fair expectation for them. And then you've got that next level where Jaden Ricketts, the number 269 player, number 45 wide receiver out of Pataskil, Ohio. He goes to Watkins Memorial. Pataskil is like 30 minutes from here, from Columbus. And then you've got Brock Boyd from South Lake Carroll, Texas, the same high school as Quinn Ewers, number 380 player, number 58 wide receiver in the country. Two lower four-star rated recruits where maybe not in 2027, but in 2028, they're maybe pushing onto the field a little bit. And that's probably where I would put Jerquaden Guilford too, that level of maybe by year 3. Maybe they're on the Bryson Rogers plan. I like this. Ohio State's got a little bit of variety now. You've got guys who are on the Jeremiah Smith plan of, hey, come in here and be awesome on day one. That is probably Chris Henry. If a wide receiver is going to do it, he has the best chance of doing it. Just like Quincy Porter in 2025 has the best case of doing it. Is he going to do it? Probably not, because the room's loaded. Then you've got the Carnell Tate. Actually, I would throw Carnell Tate in the JJ, because Carnell pushed for playing time. It just wasn't JJ playing time. So maybe, you know what? Scratch everything I just said. JJ, the alien, and then the next level is where Carnell, Marvin, Emeka was here. Quincy Porter is going to be here. This is where I would put Chris Henry Jr. of, you are good enough to play. We just don't need you to play as a true freshman. And then that next level is where you put Brandon Ennis, Mylan Graham, Caden Dixon Wyatt as guys where, for whatever the context is, this is why you're not playing. Right? Brandon Ennis and Mylan Graham didn't early enroll, so they didn't have a chance to put themselves in the you're good enough to play, we just don't need you. Caden Dixon Wyatt is early enrolling. It's just the room's crazy. So let's check back in on you in 2027. You got Bryson Rogers, Desi Jones, Brock Boyd, Jaden Ricketts, and now Jerquaden Guilford. That's that grouping of guys where not in year 1, not year 2, but in year 3, they get to this point of, hey, they're really good too. Just because he brought in some 5 stars behind him doesn't mean these guys aren't very good. And so I do like this. It's almost like putting wide receivers in the hats. And Jerquaden Guilford, if you're looking for a trajectory, now obviously this can all turn into a crapshoot, and Jerquaden Guilford shows up here in January, and it's like, no, that dude's going to be like a starting Z receiver in 2027, because that's just how wide receivers here go. But if you had to point out an ideal trajectory, I think the Bryson Rogers path is probably the one you would put Jerquaden Guilford in, along with Jaden Ricketts and Brock Boyd. Jerquaden Guilford, the number 439 player in the country, number 68 wide receiver, and the number 5 wide receiver in Ohio State's 2026 recruiting class. Is he actually done now?
He should be. Because I think 6 would be overkill. And I know
this is a too deep of wide receivers.
Yeah, I genuinely believe that 6 would be overkill, because, at that point it's like, all right, well, I get it, you want to fill the room out, and I get it, you have all these extra scholarships. You're gonna give all those extra scholarships to receivers? I don't think that's right. But it is crazy whenever you talk about a kid like a Guilford, where it's like, all right, let's check back in year 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I was kind of doing one of these and laughing as we were talking about it, okay, Carnell Tate, I think we're kind of all expecting here at Buckeye Talk and cleveland.com to be gone. I know he's in his 3rd year. I don't think he's going to return for 2026. Brandon Ennis is a question mark. Jeremiah Smith definitely has to return, hilariously. So Jeremiah Smith, definitely. Brandon Ennis, maybe. And then you have one option. Okay, Mylan Graham was a 5-star.
Yep.
And Quincy Porter was a 5-star. And both of those guys are going to be competing for reps. Maybe your room is Jeremiah Smith and Mylan Graham and Quincy Porter. And maybe that's the trio if Brandon Ennis goes to the NFL. Maybe Ennis stays and one of those guys is still a depth player. You have Bryson Rogers in the mix. You've got Phillip Bell, who is in the mix. I know, you have been talking to people around the program who really liked his game, and the name Emeka Egbuka was thrown around a little bit when they talked about Phillip Bell. And then, oh, by the way, not only in this class are you bringing in a ton of talent, you have the number 1 rated wide receiver committed in the 2027 class in Jameer Brown. He will be on campus. So, if we're going to talk about Chris Henry Jr. and Marv and all these guys that push for playing time as freshmen, Jameer Brown is in that mix too.
Yeah.
So it's not just the guys that are ahead of him and the guys that are with Jerquaden Guilford that are going to compete with him for playing time. You're also maybe bringing in the best receiver in 2027, the kid who has literal college, high level, maybe borderline Olympic track speed. That's the kid you're bringing in with Jameer Brown. It's a crazy concept to talk about, but that's where we're at with Ohio State, to where I think kids, Jerquaden Guilford might be the perfect example of kids looking at Ohio State's room and going, I don't know if I'm going to play, but I'm going to go to Ohio State. I'm going to get developed by Brian Hartline, and I'm going to try my best to play. I'm going to play at one of the better programs in college football. And if I have to leave, I know I just got developed by one of the best coaches in college football. And I think that is something that I would love to kind of dive into as we get into fall camp with maybe some of these guys where, again, we mentioned it, Jerquaden Guilford, if he goes to Indiana, he's their number one receiver. Like, maybe not in 2025, but he's certainly playing. You know, there's a lot of these guys in this room where you can look at and say, man, if Mylan Graham is at Michigan, where is he on the depth chart? If Mylan Graham's at Penn State, a team that thinks they can win the national championship, Mylan Graham is probably Penn State's number one receiver going into this season. And we don't know if he's going to play. So this concept of Ohio State receivers just kind of, you just take a bunch of them and they're okay with it because they know they're getting developed and they know that this team just sends first round picks to the NFL like a factory. That is interesting to me. And I think that is Jerquaden Guilford in a nutshell. This is a kid and this is a program who said, man, we already got all these guys, but if you're down for this, we can develop you and we'll see where we're at in 2 to 3 years.
614-350-3315. It's a 2-week free trial and $3.99 after that. Get the text. It's a good time over there. We talk a lot of Ohio State football, a lot of nonsense as well. Ohio State adds its 5th wide receiver in its 2026 recruiting class, the most they've added in one class during the Ryan Day era. Jerquaden Guilford, number 439 player, number 68 wide receiver out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. That's Andrew Gillis. I'm Stephen Means. Go listen to Buckeye Talk wherever you find podcasts. See ya.